Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! So let's start this by explaining what I do for work. First of all, I work for a school district doing IT. Given the nature of how the job works, I can be doing anything from running wires to cutting metal and all sorts of different types of work. When I'm doing things that will be a bit more dirty, I will wear normal clothes. This is not too different from what I would normally wear minus a t-shirt instead of a golf-type shirt. So I'm at Home Depot wearing a pair of tan cargo pants, hiking shoes and a red t-shirt that says a Coke brand on the front, as well as my old beat-up hat and a pair of sunglasses on my head cause I was inside. So I'm looking around for some things for a certain job in the afternoon, and an old lady asked me for help. I gladly helped her get something off a higher shelf, as well as answered a few questions for her because I just knew more about construction than she did, obviously. Really, she just wanted to know some best ways to mount some pictures that were a bit more heavy, so I directed her to some proper mounting materials and explained the best way to mount the hangers. Nothing special. So I walked down the aisle because I needed to be in the hardware aisle anyway, looking for some stuff. As I'm crouched down, I have some other things in my hands and I'm taking things out and putting them back as I look for the proper hardware. It's not like what I'm doing has any sort of a set way of doing it, so I'm just trying to go off the fly and figure out what would work best for what I want to accomplish. Another lady walks up and right off the bat really rudely starts demanding that I help her. Keep in mind, I in no way look like I work at Home Depot. It's about time I found someone. I need help. I ignore her since it clearly doesn't sound like she's talking to me. She grabs my shoulder and pulls me back as I'm crouched down while causing me to fall back. What was that, lady? There is no way to talk to a customer. I should report you to your manager for ignoring me and swearing at me. That would be a great idea if I worked here. Go away. You obviously work here. Go get a ladder and… No thanks, I'm good. I am going to go get it. Me loud enough for those around to hear? No, I will not go to your car to make out with you. I am not even all that angry, annoyed maybe, but I get joy making people like this uncomfortable. The entitled woman stammering, I didn't. That's not… The manager sees a commotion and walks up. She starts screaming at how unprofessional I am and so forth. I know the manager. We have bought each other drinks at the local VFW. He knows how to work there. She tells him, he helped this old witch and now he won't help me. But the manager cuts her off. Ma'am, you are hereby banned from this store. Leave now or you'll be escorted by force by an officer. The lady refuses to leave and, as promised, is booted from the store by cops. Fast forward to yesterday, hence this post now. Again, I work in a school district. All subs must come to me to get a temp key fob to get in and out of the building. And she walks into the office. She immediately goes off screaming at me. I seriously don't even recognize her at first. Then it hits me. I put on a nice big grin and I acted all nicely to her. I let her know that I have to call the office to confirm her placement. The office hears her screaming over the phone, and I quietly and quickly explain. 2 minutes later, the resource officer rolls up, sees what's going on, and escorts her off the property. She has been removed from the list that's pulled from, so she can no longer sub in our district. After going into more detail, the situation was my boss and superintendent. He also plans on calling a few other districts to warn them. I am sure it's for the best. She couldn't be all that mentally stable. Well, I spent the afternoon at work yesterday reading all these stories and decided to share one of my own back from my last job. But first, some quick background and setting the scene. I used to work a commission sales job selling mostly cell phones and cell phone accessories. We also sold radios in our shack. I started out as a part-time sales associate right out of college, and after a chunk of time, I had worked my way up to the store manager. My store was a quiet little place, always last in sales in our region, but I had a great team and we all did our jobs well. I was very attached to my store scene as I had started so low and made it mine through the years. Important to note, we were right next to a giant grocery store and a Chipotle. Oh, how I miss that. Being right next to a grocery store, I was there shopping often. I knew most of the staff and they often stopped in my store to chat or browse. Now the uniform I had to wear was basic. Black dress pants, a Red Company branded polo, a dress shirt. The grocery store? Nothing like that at all. We still were often confused for employees there, which at first was terrible, but it became so common we just dealt with it. I knew where things were, so I would help if I could. Most people were okay with admitting their mistake and moving on, but not everyone. Anyway, on to the story. I was freshly made the manager of the store and decided to show some appreciation to my employees and schedule myself for all of Sunday with minimal help. A thanks for being an awesome team and getting me here, so take the day off type deal. Holy hell, Sunday was so slow. I decided to wander to the store for my lunch and grab some food. Sunday may be slow in my shack, but not here at the grocery store. I had paused and almost hit back as I had food with me that I just didn't want to eat. Instead, I bravely go. Bad butt leak. Bad. I'm standing in the drink aisle debating between a soda or lemonade when I notice to my left is a small, already grouchy looking old man. I think he wants to be next to me, so I ignore him and slide over. The old man says, "Help me. You need to help me now." What? Excuse me? You need to help me. At this point, I think he either needs help with a heavy case or he thinks I work here. And I attempt the former. Sorry, sir, did you need me to grab you something off the shelf? No, I need you to stop ignoring me and do your damn job, kid. Sir, I don't work here. Well, yes, you do. So go in the back and go grab me some more soda. I have a picnic to get to. Great. Enjoy it. I still do work here. Stop lying, kid. Side note, I hate when people call me kid or any variation. He kept using it, so I decided I wasn't going to help this man, as I usually would. Let me explain this to you clearly enough for you to understand. I do not work here. Read my shirt. Well, now I don't care where you work. You're helping me and I need to get going. So deal with it and grab me my stuff. Right, sir. You need to stop. Best of luck with your stuff. What did you say to me, boy? And here's where this grumpy old jerk grabbed my arm to spin me around as I walked away. No, thank you. I smacked his hand off my arm and continued to walk away. Don't you dare walk away from me, kid. Back off, old man. This enraged the man. He went from grumpy old man to an enraged grumpy old man after a headshot. You work at that shack? I'll back off right to your manager if you don't work here. Oh, great. He abandons his cart at this point and follows me through the self-checkout as I paid. Tiny, enraged old people be damned. I am buying my food. So we wander down the plaza and into my jack. He keeps telling me how I'm going to get fired and he can't wait to watch it. I am calm as a cucumber because I knew I was ahead for this tiny man's poor, screaming soul. We enter the store and thankfully it's empty. Just my one employee chilling near the TV display. Now go give me the manager. I'm late as it is. Happy to. Let me clock in. I may as well be getting paid to get fired, you know? Now! My employee has taken notice. He is baffled. I am normally a calm person and handle angry customers well. He's got no idea why this is all happening, but he's got the sense to just hang out. And I clock in. I tell him, all right, what do you need again? The manager. The manager. I grin. You think this is a joke? You're going to learn some respect today. Sir, I am the manager. So my hard work finally paid off. He continued to yell and scream. He asked for the district manager's number. He asked for another store manager's number. He even asked my people to come fire me. He was fine until he knocked over a register display and threatened to destroy more in the store. So I got to kick him out. The rest of the day was pretty smooth. No idea how his picnic went, but they probably didn't have anything to drink. I was a student at a prestigious high school and I was determined to succeed in my studies. I was somehow a bright student and I worked hard to achieve my goals. However, I had a difficult time in one of my classes because of my teacher, Karen. My teacher, Karen, was a strict and demanding woman who believed that she was superior to her students. She had been teaching at our high school for many years and had a reputation for being a perfectionist. Karen expected us to treat her with the utmost respect at all times and would get angry if we didn't meet her expectations. I had always found Karen's expectations to be unrealistic and her behavior to be unreasonable and volatile. She had a tendency to hold grudges and would often single out certain students for punishment or criticism. Karen was known for having outbursts of anger and lashing out at her students if they didn't meet her high standards. Despite her flaws, Karen was a skilled teacher and was well respected in the community. Many of her former students had gone on to succeed in their studies and careers, and Karen took pride in their achievements. However, her sense of entitlement and her lack of empathy for her students had caused her to become increasingly isolated and disliked by her colleagues and her students. I had always tried to avoid Karen and stay out of her way, but one day she caught me talking to a group of my classmates during class, and she immediately reprimanded me and demanded that I stand in front of the class as punishment. "Maria, what do you think you're doing? You know that talking during class is not allowed. Stand up and face the class as punishment." I stood up feeling humiliated and embarrassed. "I'm sorry, Miss Karen. I was just talking to my classmates about our homework. It won't happen again." "It had better not happen again. I expect complete silence and focus on my class. Is that understood?" "Fine," I said with a slight sigh. "Fine? Did you just sigh and say fine to me?" Clearly, Karen felt disrespected by this and decided to take things further. She began yelling at me and berating me in front of the entire class. "How dare you disrespect me like this, Maria? I'm your teacher, and you will show me the respect that I deserve. Do you understand?" "I'm sorry, Miss Karen. I didn't mean to disrespect you. I was just talking to my classmates about our homework." "I don't want to hear your excuses, Maria. You are a disrespectful and insolent student, and you will be punished accordingly." As the confrontation escalated, Karen lost control and ended up physically attacking me. She grabbed me by the hair and began hitting me repeatedly. The other students in the class were shocked and terrified by Karen's behavior, and they quickly called for help. My parents were called in by the principal and were shocked and horrified by what had happened. Also, one more thing you should know about my mother. Well, my mother was a strong and influential woman in our community. She had always been fiercely protective of me and my siblings, and she was not afraid to speak her mind or stand up for what she believed in. However, my mother also had a bit of a temper and could be quick to anger when she felt that we were being wronged or mistreated. The principal invited Karen to his office to discuss the incident, and my mother accompanied me. Karen was unrepentant and seemed to think that she had done nothing wrong. She insisted that she had been provoked by my disrespectful behavior and that she had acted in self-defense. "Miss Karen, I can't believe what you've done," my mother said. "You attacked my daughter in front of her classmates and expect us to just brush it off? How could you do something so reprehensible? I'm sorry, but your daughter deserved it." At this point, my mother's eyes are blazing with fury. She raised her hand and slapped Karen across the face. "You have caused my daughter a great deal of pain and trauma. I will not rest until you're held accountable for your actions." Karen was shocked and stunned by the slap, and she stared at my mother in disbelief. The principal stepped in to calm the situation, but my mother was beyond reasoning. She was a woman of influence in our community and was used to get in her way. She was determined to see justice done for the attack on me. "Ma'am, please calm down," the principal said to my mom, trying to intervene. "We understand that you're upset, but violence is not the answer. This woman attacked my daughter, and you expect me to stay calm? I will not stand for this kind of behavior in our school. I demand that she be arrested and charged with assault." The school administration immediately launched an investigation, and Karen was suspended from her teaching duties and faced disciplinary action. The incident caused a great deal of outrage in the community, and Karen was eventually fired from her job. She was also sentenced to probation and community service for her attack on me. I was relieved that justice had been served and I was grateful to my parents for their support. However, my parents were not satisfied with the outcome of the criminal case and wanted to pursue a civil lawsuit against Karen. They believed that Karen needed to be held accountable for the emotional damage that she had caused me, and they wanted to seek compensation for my medical bills and therapy costs. A little bit of background first. My 8th grade year of middle school, we had one of our teachers leave at the very beginning of the year to go teach in another district. So the school's administration had to find a replacement in very little time, and about 2 weeks into the school year, they hired the teacher I will call Miss E. Immediately she gave off a vibe that screamed, "I'm only nice when my boss is in a room." The next few weeks went by and the majority of the students who had her as a teacher all agreed that she had no idea how to teach, nor did she make any effort to show the students some respect. I am talking daily incidents of her picking on a class, complaining about not getting work done and then wasting 20 minutes of class time while complaining. Miss E was also the type of teacher to pick favorites and pick on kids who she didn't like as much. She absolutely hated me, as I often made it a point to start messing with her during class as for realizing what kind of person she really was. Stuff like getting a whole group of people to move their desk an inch forward every few seconds. We also got access to her in-class phone number, which we spent a lot of time calling her on just to see her reaction. A whole lot of other incidents occurred in that class which would tell us some great stories, but I'll keep this short since it's already pretty lengthy. In May of that year, we were finishing a unit on a book and took a test on it. The test was created by Miss E and had a lot of errors in it. Some of the test questions referred to very small details of the book or contradictory story pieces that made no sense. We got the tests back about a week later, with the highest grade in the class being a 70%. This clearly isn't right, so a few of us went to talk to her about it, even showing evidence from the book that some of the questions that were wrong happened to be right, or 3, or there were 2 answers, and so on. Miss E refused to listen to any of us and told all of us to sit down, a group of about 5 people including me. She got up and went on about how she felt, word for word, personally attacked and undermined, and had something made up about how the 2 points don't matter when our concern was focused on a whole test. Remember how she referenced being personally attacked? Well, next thing she starts talking about is my personal grade on it, and how I went to her and attacked her about my grade. This went on for a while, mainly back and forth between me and her for about 2 days. At times, people would speak up and agree or add to something I would say, but in the end it turned out to be a debate between Miss E and I. So what did we do? After the first day, as soon as I got home, I turned on my computer, opened Gmail and wrote about 4 pages worth of description and complaints to our principal and vice principal. I was brought down to the office the next day, where I was given a detention written by Miss E, given for insubordination, intrusive undermining, and disrupting instruction. Total bullcrap. So I told him I wasn't going. He asked me to verify most of the information and elaborate on some of the incidents I described. His idea was to have me form a group of all the people involved and have us write a list of complaints and incidents from the class. And if everything cleared up, I'd get off without a punishment. As a group of about 10 students, we wrote 17 pages of grievances and evidence that Miss E was clearly not fit for teaching middle school students. The principals read all of it at once. And for the next week, instead of class time, we worked on other classes while the principals interviewed everyone in a class, including Miss E. After it was all over, Miss E was required to give a formal apology, where she spouted out some fake tears and a bullcrap written up apology that ignored the majority of the problems we were actually referring to. My detention was waived, and next year she was no longer teaching in our school district. I worked at a chain salon in the US for a minimum wage, plus tips. We got paid on a sliding scale. The more you added service, the more your hourly pay. Then for back to school, we started offering $10 haircuts. It's dumb to offer a big discount on back to school because that's when everyone needs a haircut, but whatever. Except to advertise a sale, we had to stand on a rickety step stool and hang a 10-foot long, 3-foot wide banner on the roof of our store. The step stool alone made it a dangerous task, but on top of it, the sidewalk was uneven. Our manager insisted we do it twice a day, open and close, in case someone steals the banner. Because certainly someone would want to steal a banner with our logo that says $10 haircuts. It was annoying, but I was looking forward to my next paycheck. I had a high service dollar per hour, which should have meant a bigger hourly pay and paycheck. Except it didn't. That $7 haircut discount, it was coming out of our final service dollar calculations, and we ended up making significantly less than usual. I'd worked there for years, and this was the smallest back-to-school paycheck I'd ever seen. I went in the next day and was pissed. That morning, a co-worker who was a total brown nose and gossip and I were outside setting up the banner. It was my turn to stand on a rickety step stool, and I said I was glad this will be the last time I ever do this. I was fully prepared to make a joke about how I was going to fall and crack my head open, when the pity revenge idea came into my mind and I swiftly executed it. When she asked why, I told her not to tell anyone, but I'd accepted a job in another salon with a set schedule, higher commission, and $5 more an hour. I said I planned on putting in my 2 weeks, but they needed to start sooner, so I was going to work the weekend and not come back. This would leave us understaffed for the back-to-school rush. After reiterating she could not tell anyone, especially not our boss, she agreed. I left early that day, and on my next shift, my boss pulled me into her office. She said she'd heard the rumor that I was leaving to work at a different salon. I told her I had a much better offer elsewhere, but if she could match that, I would love to stay. She had to put a call in to our district leader about the raise, but said I could work with a set schedule starting the following week. I was working until 9 p.m. some days and at 9 a.m. the next. The unpredictable schedule made finding childcare a pain in the butt. I was consistently ranked second in sales for our store and the district. So the district leader approved the raise and I stayed there another 5 years, which means I got an additional $39,000 in pay for accidentally telling the salon gossip my secret. I also got a 20% commission on $500 to $1,000 a week in product sales. The Pro Revenge. I also started printing out my service sales slip from the day before at the beginning of every shift, so that when payroll readjusted the paychecks to include coupons, I could pull up my record and dispute it. According to payroll, there was nothing they could do about it. I stayed another 5 years, raising the issue sporadically until they brought back the $10 haircut sale and I quit. A few months after I left, I was made aware that a different employee in another state filed a class action lawsuit, and I got a letter asking if I wanted to be a part of it. I accepted, and the lawyer loved receiving 5 years worth of documentation, emails from corporate and payroll and so on. They had to go back through all of my paychecks and compensate me for the difference. This included adding the free haircuts, reward program, and discounted haircuts as their whole amount, increasing the service dollar 19 cents an hour here and 30 cents an hour there added up, and despite the fact that the settlement was split with a lot of people, I got $10K from that in addition to my adjusted pay, which was around half the settlement amount. I was pushing 40 and I'd learned a lot of lessons in more than 10 years of legal practice, but one of the most important lessons I learned was from an older lawyer that I worked for as a summer student after the second year of law school. A lawyer has 3 duties, he told me. First to himself, second to the court, and last, the client. Always make sure you come first and the client comes last. The reason? Because clients will screw you. He said that. They will throw you under the bus without thinking twice. I should have stayed with this lawyer, but being young and an idiot, I had to go work downtown, and I'm still downtown now. But fortunately for me, I remembered this lesson, and it came in handy many years later when a client really did try to throw me under the bus. My client was this mid-sized company that did this and that and owned things here and there. Not big enough to be listed, but it did have a pretty sizable real estate portfolio. One day a building they owned burned to the ground. The company wanted to collect on the insurance, so they told Frank, a veteran salaryman, to deal with it. Frank was close to 60 and thought he knew what he was doing. He didn't need me to help him with the insurance claim. He told me he had everything under control. Besides, lawyers are expensive. Some guys really get off on not paying legal fees. And Frank was one of those guys who gloated over every penny that he managed not to pay to the lawyers. I dealt with Frank a lot, and he was always nickel and diming me. The insurer is going to screw you, I told Frank. It was only by luck that I even knew about the fire and loss because Frank had not asked for my help. He just let it slip one day, and since then, I kept on top of him, trying to get him to smarten up. I'd had to fight to get him to send me the proof of loss form to make sure he hadn't messed that up. Frank screwed up a lot, and I wondered sometimes how he had a job. But the proof of loss was okay, at least, so that was one less thing to worry about. You don't know that, he said that. I could tell he just wanted to get me off the phone. Well, I am paid to know when insurers are trying to screw my clients, I said that, and the insurer is going to screw you. They have been stringing you along for ages, and requests and questions and paperwork, but they aren't going to pay you, not unless you sue them. But Frank said he knew what he was doing, that it was all under control, and besides, he got along with the adjuster so great. The limitation period expires in 2 weeks, I said. And once that 2 weeks pass, it will be too late to sue. The moment that limitation period expires, they will stop taking your calls. You'll get a final email saying sorry, we're out of time. And that will be that. Don't leave this till the last minute. Let me sue right now, and you will have the money in no time. But Frank was like, sure, fine, whatever. Don't bother me, I got this, blah blah blah. And he got off the phone as soon as he could. I sent him the usual email with clear warnings and recommendations, which he ignored. I sent the email again and then again as the limitation period approached, and again a couple of days before the deadline. I am going to be at trial and you won't be able to reach me. My final email said, but you have to sue. You have other firms on your list, so pick one and sue. He didn't bother to reply and I went off to do my trial. The trial lasted a couple of weeks and no email from Frank. Then a month passed and another month, still no email. I figured he must have sorted things out. Maybe Frank was right after all, I said to myself, and then my phone rang. It was Frank. Remember that fire insurance thing we spoke about? We'd only spoken about it like a dozen times. I figured he was calling up to gloat, so I cut to the chase. I tell him, so they paid out? That's great, Frank. You were right. He asked me what I was talking about, and could he see a copy of the claim? I asked, what claim? The claim against the insurer. You know, that claim. Does that mean the insurer didn't pay? I said. He hung up on me, and then a few minutes later, the computer dinged, and there was Frank's email talking about how we spoke, and he told me to sue. And he was worried when I hadn't sent him a copy of the claim, so he was following up to get a copy of the claim. I emailed him back. I take it that the insurer didn't pay you, just like I told you they would. And now that the limitation period is expired, they told you to jump in a lake, leaving you with a loss in the millions. Is that it? I'd made a mistake by not going over Frank's head when he wouldn't listen to me. But if I'd gone over Frank's head, I never would have received another file from him, so I didn't. But that was then, and this was now. So I CC'd Frank's boss and his boss's boss. Plus, I CC'd Bella, the client's in-house counsel. Bill acknowledged my email right away and called me later that day. Frank messed up. He said that. We know that. He's an idiot. So what do we do? So his excuses didn't work? Nope. Bill explained that they'd summoned Frank to a boardroom, but his story didn't add up, given all the warnings I'd sent him. Besides, there would have been no reason for him to keep emailing the insurer if he told me to sue. Once the file goes to legal counsel, Frank's role was over. The company knew Frank was bullcrapping them. So So that's it then, Bill said. We just lost a couple $1,000,000. It's okay, I said, explaining that when I realized that Frank was going to screw up, I issued a claim against the insurer because I'd made Frank send me the proof of loss a while earlier. I had enough information that I could sue to preserve the cause of action. Not a great claim and short on details, but good enough. You sued without instructions? Bill said that. Lawyers aren't supposed to sue without instructions because if you do that, you're personally liable for whatever costs the other side incurs. It's a big deal to sue without instructions. Yep, I said. I sued without instructions. I pulled up a copy of the claim and emailed it to him as we spoke. It's a little rough, I said, but we can always amend. Thank God. Bill said, Can I leave it with you? Of course he could. The insurer was a sitting duck, and I knew I'd collect from them no problem. A few days later I got a call from another guy who worked for the client, a guy I didn't normally deal with. They had a situation and needed my help. I usually deal with Frank, I said. What's up? What was up was that Frank got called into another meeting and they handed him a one-page letter. And then he put his little office things in a box and security walked him past his co-workers to the elevator and escorted him downstairs to the parking lot. Bye-bye, Frank. He was too old to get another job, or at least not a decent one. It was a life-changing event for Frank, but for me, it was just an anecdote. A cautionary tale that I tell young lawyers sometimes over beers. Maybe too often because I am getting on in years and I have my favorite stories. I wasn't trying to get revenge on Frank, not at all, and I would have felt a bit sorry for him if he hadn't been trying to throw me under the bus. But this guy who replaced him was great and never nickel and dimed me. So it was all good. So I had a really rough time in high school. Due to an on-again, off-again abusive boyfriend, I was suffering with severe depression and chronic anxiety, and my grades were suffering badly. At the start of my junior year, my mom decided it might be a good idea to enroll me in a school that catered to kids that suffer from mental illness, called Interim Health. This school is also attached to the Young Mothers program, helping teenage girls that were pregnant prepare for having their babies while also trying to help them graduate. This school is also extremely small, one hallway across, maybe 8 rooms total. Its student population was maybe 150 students at max, but you'd be lucky to see 30 on any given day. There was only one teacher for each subject except math, which had 2. One that taught sophomores and below, and the other that taught the juniors and seniors, the latter being who this tale is about today. Now that I've set the scene, let's get into the meat of the story. I could complain about this school all day, about how it was woefully underfunded or how crammed and depressing it was and so on. But the teachers were amazing, all very understanding of each student's individual needs, always willing to work extra hard to help students who were struggling and did their best even with a limited budget to make classes engaging. All but one, my math teacher, who we will call Mac. Now you could tell right from the start that Mac felt a little too comfortable in his position at the school. Within a week of school start, he had gone from lazily and poorly teaching his lessons to giving up entirely and pulling up episodes of X-Files during class time. Occasionally walking out for 10 to 20 minutes at a time to go talk to his best buddy across the hall, his principal. The two of them were nearly inseparable, to the point where if you were trying to look for Mac, you'd be more likely to find him in the principal's office than in his own office. If you ever stumbled across a pair of them, they were always laughing about some inside joke, clearly not taking their jobs too seriously. Here's where things go from maybe mildly annoying to absolutely infuriating because Mac was also a massive bully. Mac would constantly make fun of his own student behind their back, criticizing the young mother students for their poor choices, saying things like maybe if they weren't such idiots, they wouldn't have gotten themselves into this mess, and they should have just been smart enough to realize the consequences. Now they will be stuck, broke, and dependent on their parents for the rest of their lives. Pathetic. And he made it a habit to make dead baby jokes to them and laugh at their disgusted reactions. He was worse to the interim health students. He'd call us crazies and say things like, "I am not a babysitter. This is what psych wards are for." Note, most of the interim health students were like me, just suffering from depression or anxiety. Some had slight learning disabilities, but nothing so severe as what he was making it out as. He'd have nicknames for the slow-learning students like Danzy the Jerk and the Terrible Tard. One time, one of the students that was unfortunately pretty well known for her self-harm scars slit her wrists in the school bathroom and had to be taken to the ER. And as she was getting wheeled off, I overheard Max say, "You'd think after the first failed attempt, she'd have Googled the right way to do it." On top of all that, halfway through the year he had taken up a new part-time job, trying to convince his own students to drop out of high school and instead sign up for fake classes to get fake diplomas from a fake online school. He even tried to rope me into doing the dirty work for him in exchange for the community service hours I needed to graduate. I declined. Now this revenge plot starts about 2 months before the end of the year. Up until then, I'd managed to remain pretty quiet on the topic to my parents, mainly just whining about it to my friends. But one day something he said just made me snap. I had had enough. I went home seizing, and that night at dinner, I went on and on about how terrible of a teacher he was, how incompetent, childish, and cruel he was. Eventually, after I calmed down, my mom asked me what his name was, and I told her. At that moment, I saw a look of recognition immediately flew into intense rage as she said, "I've been trying to get him fired for years." Unfortunately, her position on a school board didn't allow her to hire or fire teachers. That night, she begged me to write out a statement on all the things he had done and said, and that's when I had an idea. I told my mom I'd do her one better, and the next day I went into school with an empty notebook and a mountain of pens. Over the course of the next week or so, I went up to every single student I could explain what I was doing and begged them to write down anything they could think of that showed that he was a terrible teacher. I wanted to nail him to the cross with bureaucracy. I wanted to ensure that he would never teach in any school district, any state, any country again. I managed to get about 30 statements from the students and even a couple from the teachers. Then came time for my statement. I wrote out a 3-page account on all the terrible things I'd seen him say and do and how harmful I thought it was to not only the students learning there, but also to the reputation of the school district. It was a masterpiece. I handed them all over to my mom and waited. Some time went by, and as I waited, I relished every cruel comment he made, in every episode of the X-Files we watched, in every extra long bathroom break he took. And I was not the only one. It was like the whole school was waiting with bated breath, and then the day came. The day that we had a substitute teacher. I was elated until the very last day of school. So one of the last days, I ended up asking the principal what he had been up to since. She said that he had to move back in with his parents and that he had yet to